Good morning, warriors. Dr. Rick Wallace here, dropping in for the morning inspirational moment. I know you guys are probably expecting a little earlier. It's been an extremely busy day. There's a lot going on. You guys will be seeing me a little bit more today. I got some things I really need to get off my chest and talk about. But what I want to do now is get this day started on a positive note. If you've got your day started and it hasn't gotten off to a good start, if you're going through a bad week, a bad month, a bad hour, listen to what I'm about to say here and really step back. What I need you to do right now, before I even get started, is step back a moment from your feelings. Step back from your emotions. Step back from how you're feeling right now, because how you're feeling is creating this cyclical process that's actually feeding the negativity that's creating your reality right now. So what I want you to do first and foremost is just step back from those feelings for a minute, put them to the side, and let's press the reset button. Let's look at things a little bit differently. What we've got to learn how to do is immediately when something negative comes into our world, our periphery, our environment, we've got to learn how to deal with it immediately. It's going to happen because we don't control all of the things that are going around us. There are things that are going to happen that are outside of our control. What we do control is how we deal with them. What we do control is what we give the most weight to, the most gravity to. Are we going to give the gravity to the negative thing, or are we going to give the gravity to the positive that we can take out of this negative situation and create a change or a different situation out of it? Are we going to look at it from a positive perspective or a negative perspective? One of the things that I see when I'm dealing with my clients when they first come to me is what I call misdiagnosed misery and self-diagnosed failure. In other words, because the breakthrough, the victory, the progress didn't come through the front door where it was invited, it may have came through the back door, or it may have been disguised as temporary defeat. It was an immediate interpretation of the situation as failure. Failure is temporary defeat is not failure. Let me explain something to you. The greatest athlete, the greatest businessman, the greatest investor, the greatest speaker, whatever you want to think of, the person who's the greatest in that particular place, the greatest basketball team, the greatest whatever, the greatest coach, has not won all their games, has not always hit on every investment, has not always nailed every speech and every lecture, and they experience what I call temporary defeat. In other words, being a winner doesn't mean that you win every time you step out. Being a winner is that you have a mindset that demands that you win, and that when you lose, you interpret that loss as a time to learn, because you lose because you didn't deliver. When you lose, it was something you could have done that you didn't do. When you lose, there are those times now when you lose because the person that's standing on the stage or opposite you on the field of the basketball court is simply better. Then what that tells you is you need to go back to the drawing board. You need to work harder. You need to become better. You need to get stronger. You need to develop a new strategy. You've got to be better. You need more endurance. You need more training. You need more strength. In other words, whenever you lose because somebody was better than you, that's the one time you can sit up and say, okay, it was nothing I could do. They were just simply better. But that should drive you to be better. In those times where somebody beats you and you know you could have won, then that tells you you didn't come to the table prepared. That tells you that you made some decisions along the way that interfered with your ability or your opportunity to win. Delay is not denial. Delay is not an automatic denial because it didn't come when you thought it should, or it came in a way that you weren't expecting it. You misdiagnosed it, creating an entire environment of absolute misery because you didn't see what you thought you should have seen. So what you got to understand is you got to always go back to your common denominator. You always got to go back to ground zero. When you come into an environment in which things are not going the way you thought they would, you don't feel sorry for yourself. You don't take on a victim mentality. You don't start pointing fingers and blaming. You look at yourself. You say, what am I not doing that I could be doing to make this situation different? You tell yourself that my destiny is set. And the very definition of destiny means that no matter how hard people try to stop it, they only ensure that it happens. So my destiny is sure. I have to stay in focus. I have to stay on point. I have to keep my mind set up. So you raise your head, you square your shoulders. And what that actually does, that physical posturing actually changes your entire attitude. There's a reason why we consistently tell one another when we're feeling down and we're feeling sort of blah, blah, to lift your head. There's a reason. Why? Because physical posturing actually impacts emotional positioning and emotional and spiritual states, psychological states as well. When you hold your head up and you square your shoulders, it's almost impossible to feel defeated, to feel as if there isn't something you can do about your situation, about your circumstance. And there always is. You're never at your optimal. You're never at the supreme state of your existence. There's always room for improvement. So if you meet temporary defeat, it's just a reminder that there's work to do. It does not mean that you should just shut down, give up, feel bad, start pointing the finger, start placing blame, start kicking yourself, start feeling down. Stand up. Square your shoulders, lift your head up. Tell yourself, I didn't get it this time, and I'm going out. Tell yourself the same thing the San Antonio Spurs told themselves when they suffered that demoralizing defeat in game 1. Now they're up 3-2 on the Rockets. They came back and said, that wasn't us. We're better than this. We can do this. We can play better than we played. They didn't beat us because they were better. They beat us because we didn't play our best. And that is what you got to be able to understand. The game of life will pay you whatever price you demand of it. But when you demand it, you better be willing to put in the work. You better be willing to take on the challenges. You better be willing to deal with the pain, the disappointment, the frustrations that come with it. You better be ready to square your shoulders and hold your head up when you feel like folding, laying down, and just giving up. You've got to be able to have that point in your life where it is no longer acceptable to fold. You've got to have that point in your life where you get to a point where it's hard and difficult and you say, no, I'm going the distance. I'm not going to fold right now. It hurts right now, but I'm not going to quit. I'm frustrated. I feel alone right now, but I'm not going to quit. I don't care what you're going through. If you've declared that you have a destiny and that destiny is elevated and empowered and it has an end result of you setting and building a legacy, focus on the destiny because the destiny doesn't change. While your circumstances may be capricious, you will find that the vast majority of them are just actually the fruits of your thoughts. They are the fruits of the lingering doubts that you have about who you are. When you start to really embrace the fact that there's something about you that nobody can take away from you, you will start to have these thoughts that are different than the ones you're entertaining subconsciously now, that are feeding the circumstances you still encounter. Anytime you encounter a negative circumstance, let me explain something to you. Cause and effect is always in the place, and your thoughts are the cause, and your circumstances are the effects. Let me explain what happens. When you are saying that you have something that you're striving for, and you're going after that, and then you meet some difficulty, which is life. There's going to be opposition. That's where you get stronger. That's where you grow. That's where you learn. That's where you develop strategies. That's where you become more intense in your mental preparation. That's why all of these things happen. Well, what happens is when you come to a point in your thought processes where you're still entertaining these doubts about who you are and what you're capable of doing, those thoughts are seeds. They're being planted in the soil of your mind. And they are going to produce belief systems, habits that are going to produce the results that the seeds can only produce. Doubt can only produce the results of doubt. And that's temporary failure. So when the circumstances come in, those circumstances aren't meant to tear you down, break you down, beat you up and relegate you to a life of failure. What they're telling you is there's still some thoughts that you need to deal with. There's still some belief systems within inside of yourself that you need to handle. There are some parts of you that are still entertaining thoughts that are not conducive to achieving the thing that you said you want to achieve. It's telling you there's some work to do. It's challenging you to step up your game. It's challenging you to improve yourself. And the thing is, we all have things we can improve on. We all have things we need to grow on. And so when we get these negative circumstances, we need to stop interpreting them as defeat and failure and look at them for what they are. They are challenging us to step up our game. They are challenging us to be a greater thinker, a greater preparer, a greater studier, a greater listener, a greater person to be in contact with those who can share wisdom and experience with us. That's something that my grandmother used to say to me all the time, and I've shared it with you a few times. And it sort of applies here, because one thing I think that we fail to do on a grand scale in our lives is take borrowed sense. What I mean when I say borrowed sense, my grandmother used to always say, sometimes bought sense is better than borrowed. And she would usually say that when she had told me that what I was about to do was probably not a good idea based on her experience, and I'm still looking like I'm about to do it anyway, she would simply walk by and say, sometimes bought sense is better than borrowed. What she's telling me is sometimes we have to experience things on our own because we're hard-headed. But when we become smarter, we tend to use as much borrowed sense as we possibly can. Why? Borrowed sense stops us from bumping our heads where we don't have to. Borrowed sense, that wisdom that comes from someone else who's experienced life, that wisdom that comes from someone else who's been where you're going, that wisdom that provides encouragement, that wisdom that provides a sense of balance. We really expedite our growth, expedite our progress, expedite our movement towards our ultimate goals when we're willing to accept borrowed sense, that sense that comes from someone else. And we don't have to experience it. We don't have to go through trial and error. We don't have to go through all of these many failures to get to the point we're trying to get to. So this is me giving you something now. Monitor and manage your thoughts. Your thoughts are seeds. And the seeds are being planted in your subconscious. They're being planted in the depths of your soul. And what happens is they're going to manifest. They're going to bring forth a harvest. What you're planting is going to bring forth a harvest. You can, on the outside, be saying you got it all together. On the outside, giving this impression and image of being something. But if you are still entertaining doubt on the inside, it's going to show up in your circumstances. It's going to show up in the things you're dealing with. And what you've got to be willing to do is, first of all, put your pride aside. Because we all have these moments. We all have these moments where we come face to face with seeds we planted, with the manifestations and the fruits of the seeds we've planted prior. And what we have to learn to do is sit up and say, I need to work on that. I need to be better at that. That was something I used to do. And it happened to I started out, things just happened to me. I think I had so much support as a youth in filling my head with nothing but positivity and possibilities associated with my gifts, that I always expected things to happen. So those seeds of confidence were so planted and consistent that I was just reaping the reward. So things happened for me early in life, just laying down. It almost like life was laying down for me. And then I hit a spot and it shook me. And what I didn't realize is it shook my confidence. And then what I did is I started to find that all of a sudden things were happening that weren't happening before. And I'm going wait a minute, what's going on? And what I found is I went to talk to my mentor, my advisor. I have one. If you don't have one, get one. Find one. You need somebody that is going to hold you accountable. You need somebody with wisdom. You need somebody with know-how. But I went to my mentor. I say, man, I can't figure this out. It's like all of a sudden the switches went off and everything that can go wrong can go wrong. He said, that's it right there. I'm like, what? He said, you keep saying it. He says, I've talked to you at least once or twice a week for the last month. And every time I've talked to you, there's this statement that comes out of your mouth that you just paraphrased. And I said, what is that statement? He says, you consistently say, I can't win for losing. And I'm like, whoa. You don't understand the seeds you're planting with the stories you're telling yourself. Start paying attention to the stories that you're consistently repeating to yourself, and watch how the circumstances of those stories, which produce thoughts that become seeds, watch how they are playing out as they come to harvest in your life. Watch what you're saying. Watch what you're thinking. Start believing, but stop misdiagnosing things and creating misery for yourself that isn't there. Stop self-diagnosing failure because of temporary defeat. This life is this game of life is to the end until you take your last breath. You haven't experienced defeat until you breathe your last. So stand up, square your shoulders, lift your head, get prepared to go out and put in the work that's necessary. I love you guys. I stayed a little longer than I had planned to, but I just really wanted you to get that. I'm about to bounce out. I'll be back in a second to talk about some other things, but I just wanted to give you that moment of inspiration and encouragement. As I always say, I'm on down empty. I'm dying on E. I'm giving it everything that I have, and I'm not going to leave anything undone. That's my goal. The first half of my life was about Rick, and the second half is about leaving a legacy that says I came and I did what I was placed here on this planet to do. And I love you guys. You take care. I'm out. Peace.